Think the Middle Ages were a time of pious monks, pure maidens, and a total fear of anything remotely sexual. Think again, because what you're about to hear will absolutely shatter that image. Medieval sexuality wasn't holy, restrained, or even remotely tame. It was chaotic, creative, and downright scandalous. In fact, compared to what people were getting up to back then, modern hookup culture looks like a Bible study group. Get ready to step into a world where desire met superstition, a time of aphrodisiac banquets featuring roasted animal organs and public impotence trials where men were forced to prove in front of witnesses that they really couldn't perform. This is the side of medieval life that makes 50 Shades of Grey sound like a children's bedtime story. Spoiler alert, the so-called Dark Ages weren't dark because people weren't having sex. They were dark because of the insane things they did while doing it. And we're starting with one of the most absurd courtship traditions ever invented: bundling. Picture this. You're a young man in medieval Europe and your parents have picked out your future wife. You're thinking candles, music, maybe a romantic walk. Nope. Instead, you're shoved into a sack and tucked into bed with a total stranger. Bundling was the medieval version of date night with supervision, except much weirder and a lot riskier. The couple would be fully dressed, wrapped tightly in cloth or leather, sometimes with a wooden plank between them to keep things pure. Because nothing says romance like sharing a bed with someone while a board blocks your every move. And here's the wild part: parents didn't just allow it, they encouraged it. Families saw it as a wholesome way for couples to bond without sinning. They'd literally invite potential suitors to stay the night, bundle up with their daughters and get to know each other. It's like medieval parents took the idea of supervised dating and thought, you know what this needs? Less space and more shared body heat. Bundling became so popular that people actually started producing specialized bundling bags. Entire industries formed around keeping two people in the same bed while making sure they couldn't technically touch. The mental gymnastics here are astonishing. Of course, shocker, it didn't work. Records from the period show that pregnancies among bundled couples were suspiciously high. Apparently, stuffing two hormone-fueled teenagers into bed together doesn't stop nature from doing its thing. Who could have guessed? Even the church tried to shut it down. Priests and moralists called the custom sinful, reckless, and a gateway to temptation. But no one could stop it. Bundling was too ingrained in the culture, too normalized. It's basically the medieval version of parents trying to ban TikTok. Loud protests, zero results. Technically possible, but practically insane. When it came to passion, medieval people took food is love to horrifying new levels. Forget chocolate and strawberries. Their idea of romance involved dishes that could double as a biology lesson and a health hazard. Medieval Europe was obsessed with the idea that what you ate determined how you performed in bed. And so began the era of aphrodisiac feasts, lavish, sensual banquets designed not just to fill stomachs, but to ignite desires. The star ingredient? Animal testicles. Yes, really. The prized delicacy of the day was the reproductive organs of young bulls, rams, and boars, believed to transfer virility and stamina to whoever ate them. Old cookbooks were packed with recipes for stones, the polite term for testicles, because apparently saying balls was too lowbrow for medieval nobility. They were roasted, boiled, fried, ground into powder, and even stirred into wine. If it could be cooked, seasoned, or swallowed, someone in the Middle Ages probably tried it. And the weirdness didn't stop there. Dishes featuring sparrow brains were believed to boost passion, as though eating the mind of a tiny bird could somehow make you more energetic in bed. Chefs served reproductive organs from every kind of creature they could find, under the logic that consuming fertility meant gaining fertility. It was basically witchcraft, but with extra organ meat. Even the spice trade wasn't about flavor alone. Pepper, ginger, cinnamon, saffron, all were marketed as powerful aphrodisiacs, which explains why they were as valuable as gold. The nobility would throw enormous love feasts, every course carefully crafted to heighten desire and endurance. The most bizarre part: these erotic banquets often took place at weddings. Imagine sitting at a reception today while the happy couple and their guests are served 7 courses of animal genitals, ground-up brains and honeyed nuts, all meant to supercharge the honeymoon. Even the wedding cake had a purpose. Pine nuts, almonds, and honey weren't chosen for taste, but because they were believed to fire up the libido. Medieval doctors weren't shy about it either. They wrote entire manuals on lust-enhancing diets, complete with recipes, instructions, and lists of foods that create semen. Surviving manuscripts from the time read like medicalized sex cookbooks, studied not in secret but in universities. These weren't taboo texts. They were considered legitimate science. The obsession grew so extreme that the church had to step in. Certain foods were banned during fasting seasons, not because they were luxurious, but because they were considered too erotic. Apparently, nothing distracted the faithful like saffron and roasted ram testicles. And just when you think things can't get any stranger, well, don't they do? Because in medieval high society, even losing your virginity was a public affair, literally. Welcome to the bedding ceremony. Where privacy wasn't discouraged, it was forbidden. For noble marriages, consummation had to be witnessed to make the union legally binding. The reasoning? Pure medieval logic. If land, titles, and wealth were at stake, someone had to make sure the marriage was officially sealed. So after the wedding, the newlyweds weren't whisked away to a private honeymoon suite. They were escorted to their bedchamber by an entire parade of guests. The witnesses didn't just stand outside the door either. Oh no, they stuck around to make sure the ceremony was properly completed, because nothing says romance like an audience. The spectacle began the moment the newlyweds were escorted to their chamber. The bride was undressed by her female relatives, the groom by his male kin, as if the medieval world thought a gender-segregated strip show was the height of propriety. And then came the main attraction. The couple was placed in bed while an audience of nobles, priests, and family members stood around to watch. And not a brief peek either. Witnesses often remained for the entire event, occasionally offering advice or encouragement, like a perverse combination of cheerleaders and marriage counselors. And yes, somehow it gets worse. Afterward, attendants would inspect the sheets, searching for blood as proof of virginity and evidence that the marriage had been fulfilled. Imagine presenting your used bed linens to a panel of judges as physical evidence, because that's exactly what it was. Even more disturbing, this wasn't limited to kings and queens. Any marriage involving land, dowries, or political agreements could require witnessed consummation. Thousands of couples were forced to perform their most private act under the scrutiny of relatives and clergy. Some tried to cheat the system, sneaking their witnesses just outside the door. But even that wasn't always enough. Court records describe annulments because the consummation lacked proper supervision. Translation: they had to do it again, this time with the audience back in the room. The practice became so normalized that etiquette guides actually laid out rules for it, where witnesses should stand, what they were allowed to say, and how long they were supposed to stay. Leave it to the Middle Ages to turn voyeurism into an official social ritual. But medieval nobles didn't stop there. They didn't just have sex. They scheduled it carefully, like a royal board meeting complete with religious advisors and astrological consultants. Getting pregnant in the 14th century required more planning. than launching a space mission. According to medieval logic, the stars quite literally governed your sex life. Couples would consult astrologers to pinpoint the most fertile cosmic alignments, believing that planetary positions determined the child's destiny, and sometimes even their personality. Medical treatises of the time recommended conception during the waxing moon, when the woman's humors were warm and balanced, and when particular planets were in favorable positions. Others suggested waiting for certain saints' feast days, convinced that children conceived under holy skies would be blessed. It wasn't enough to pick the right day. There were rules for everything: the time, usually midnight, the weather, warm and slightly humid, even the direction of the bed, east, toward the sunrise. Medieval sex wasn't spontaneous. It was a strategic operation. Between consulting star charts, cross-referencing feast calendars, and waiting for the proper lunar phase, trying to have a baby in medieval Europe required more preparation than an actual war campaign. When it came to choosing their baby's gender, medieval methods were downright ridiculous. Want a boy? Then you better time it with the waxing moon while the man ties off his left testicle. Yes, that was an actual instruction. Because, in the brilliant logic of the Middle Ages, boys supposedly came from the right testicle and girls from the left. The level of anatomical confusion is almost impressive, if it weren't so painfully absurd. And as if medieval science wasn't complicated enough, religion made everything infinitely worse. The Church's list of no-sex days was longer than the Bible itself. Couples were forbidden from having intercourse on Sundays, obviously, Wednesdays, Fridays during Lent, during Advent, during menstruation, during pregnancy, while breastfeeding, and on roughly 183 other holy days. It's a miracle anyone in medieval Europe managed to reproduce at all. Wealthy couples desperate to conceive under these constraints would actually hire specialists, half doctor, half priest, part-time astrologer, to design personalized fertility schedules. These medieval baby planners would consult astrological charts, examine the couple's humoral balance, and cross-check church calendars to pinpoint the exact moment sex was allowed and spiritually optimal. It was basically the first fertility app. If your fertility app charged indulgence fees and blamed the stars when it didn't work, the pressure to conceive heirs on schedule was enormous. Some couples even traveled long distances to ensure they were in the right place when the stars aligned, because apparently geography was also part of the formula. Planning to make a baby in medieval Europe wasn't just emotional labor, it was a full-time logistics operation. And then things took an even stranger turn, because medieval people managed to make underwear magical, literally. Welcome to the age of the girdle of Venus. Not a metaphor, but an actual garment. These fertility belts, often woven from silk or linen, were inscribed with prayers, star symbols, or Latin incantations, and worn around the waist to promote conception, guarantee safe childbirth, and supposedly enhance performance. Forget lingerie. This was divine shapewear. But the fertility fashion industry didn't stop there. Women wore amulets filled with everything from powdered unicorn horn, actually narwhal tusk, to crushed gemstones, because nothing says, "I'm ready to conceive," like sprinkling yourself with medieval glitter. Some of these charms contained handwritten prayers, as if God needed a written memo to remember your reproductive goals. And then came the pièce de résistance, the conception stone. A small, polished crystal that women placed inside their undergarments during intercourse, believing it would help them conceive. Each gemstone supposedly determined the baby's outcome: emeralds for boys, sapphires for girls, and diamonds for twins. Medieval people genuinely believed they could hack genetics with jewelry. Men had their own magical gear too. Rings worn on specific fingers to boost virility, amulets stuffed with animal parts, usually of course testicles, because the medieval world was obsessed with testicles, and even consecrated loincloths blessed by priests to guarantee stamina. And yes, the church got in on it. Priests would happily bless your fertility belt, sanctify your conception amulet, or even sprinkle holy water on your bed sheets. All for a small donation, of course. Because in medieval Europe, faith and fertility were a package deal, and apparently divine intervention could be bought by the yard. It's as if medieval people turned their love lives into a divine subscription plan, complete with rituals, accessories, and customer support. Some fertility belts were so complex they came with written instructions. Surviving manuscripts actually outline how to wear them, which prayers to chant while fastening the straps, and even what to do if the magic stopped working. Yes, the Middle Ages invented customer service for enchanted underwear. The fanciest versions were luxury status symbols, crafted from imported Chinese silk, stitched with gold thread, and studded with gemstones. These garments were available only to the wealthy elite. The lower classes had to improvise, using scraps of linen, local charms, and a whole lot of hope. In other words, even in the bedroom, the rich got designer enchantments, while the poor made DIY spirituality. The belief ran so deep that many women refused to have sex unless they were wearing their fertility charms. And some men wouldn't sleep with a woman who wasn't properly equipped. In medieval Europe, getting dressed became a spiritual prerequisite for getting lucky. And if you think modern divorce proceedings are brutal, wait until you hear what passed for marital justice back then. Welcome to the nightmare world of impotence trials, where privacy was outlawed, humiliation was mandatory, and your sex life became courtroom entertainment. Since the church made divorce virtually impossible, accusing your husband of impotence was one of the few ways a woman could escape a miserable marriage. But proving it? That was where things turned horrifying. The process wasn't about testimonies, it was about evidence, personal, physical, deeply uncomfortable evidence. First came the separate medical examinations. Each spouse was inspected head to toe by so-called experts who noted every perceived abnormality like they were cataloguing livestock. Then came questioning under oath, how often they'd attempted marital duty, what worked, what didn't, and whether, in the court's words, penetration had been achieved. If the results were inconclusive, the court escalated to the most infamous procedure of all, the trial by Congress. And yes, that's what they actually called it. If the doctors couldn't decide, the couple was ordered to attempt intercourse under official supervision. These sessions took place in designated chambers, often inside the courthouse itself. Officials, physicians, and witnesses would observe through peepholes or from behind screens, while the couple was expected to, well, perform. They were given a set amount of time to complete the act. If the man couldn't get or maintain an erection, the marriage could be annulled on the spot. Of course, some men tried to game the system. They smuggled in homemade aphrodisiacs, mixtures of herbs, animal organs, and magical potions, basically medieval Viagra. When caught, they were forced to undergo even more humiliating inspections to prove they weren't using artificial assistance, and the ordeal didn't always end there. Some trials dragged on for months, even years, with repeat performances ordered whenever the judges wanted additional proof. There are documented cases of couples being required to attempt intercourse dozens of times under observation, as if medieval courts believed in giving endless opportunities for extra credit. Women caught up in impotence trials didn't get off any easier, far from it. They too had to prove they were sexually functional, which meant enduring invasive physical examinations and humiliating interrogations about their arousal and reaction. The twisted logic went like this: if the husband couldn't perform, maybe it was because the wife wasn't attractive or passionate enough. In other words, even when a man's body failed him, society still found a way to blame the woman. The social fallout was brutal. No matter who won, both partners were publicly disgraced. Their most intimate details became community gossip, whispered in taverns and marketplaces. Many men simply surrendered before reaching trial, accepting annulment rather than facing the mortifying prospect of courtroom sex tests. And if you think that's the peak of medieval hypocrisy, buckle up. Because the same church that shamed these couples for their sex lives was simultaneously running one of the largest prostitution networks in Europe. That's right. The institution preaching chastity and purity was also operating a full-scale, profit-generating sex trade. In 12th century London, the district of Southwark hosted 18 licensed brothels employing over 1,000 women. And the landlords of this thriving red-light district, the bishops of Winchester, this wasn't some secret scandal, it was an open arrangement. Church authorities justified prostitution as a necessary evil, claiming it prevented greater sins like rape, adultery, and sodomy. So rather than abolish it, they decided to manage it. And of course, make money from it. Under this sanctified business model, the church maintained moral distance by never directly owning the brothels. Instead, they leased the properties, collected rent, and taxed the profits, all perfectly legal under canon law. The result was a morally convoluted pyramid scheme. Prostitutes paid rent to brothel keepers, who paid property owners, who in turn paid taxes to the church. The hierarchy of sin had bishops at the top and exploited women at the bottom. Church-run brothels came with official rulebooks. Sex workers had to follow dress codes, adhere to curfews, and live within restricted zones. They couldn't work on holy days, refuse customers without permission, or miss their regular health inspections. Everything was controlled except compassion. And the profits? They didn't just line the bishop's pockets. The money went toward holy causes, funding cathedrals, monasteries, and religious festivals. In short, the church was financing salvation with sin money. This holy hypocrisy became so institutionalized that when reformers finally tried to shut it down, they met fierce resistance, not only from the clergy, but from local governments too. There was simply too much money flowing through the system for anyone to risk losing it. For centuries, the church operated what was effectively the largest sex trafficking ring in medieval Europe, a sanctified enterprise that would put modern organized crime to shame. And as if the church's involvement in prostitution weren't contradictory enough, medieval ideas about birth control took things to a new level of absurdity. Contraception in the Middle Ages was a dangerous blend of superstition and desperation. The methods were not only bizarre, but often life-threatening. And yes, once again, animal parts were involved, because apparently medieval Europe believed there was no problem in life that couldn't be solved with a dead animal's genitals. The classic example? Weasel testicles. Women were advised to wear tiny pouches containing them around their necks as a charm to ward off pregnancy. No one seemed to ask how that was supposed to work. But in a world where magical belts and holy underwear were considered medical devices, logic clearly wasn't the priority. The reasoning behind using weasel testicles as birth control was peak medieval logic. Since weasels were seen as lustful animals that produced small litters, people assumed their reproductive organs must contain the secret to controlled fertility. The result? Medieval jewelry made from animal genitals. Because apparently, subtlety wasn't invented yet, but the testicle talismans were only the beginning. Medieval contraception was a pharmaceutical nightmare, a mix of wild superstition, bad science, and reckless chemistry. Women drank potions made from ingredients that sound like a dare gone wrong. Ground up beaver testicles stirred into wine, powdered iron dissolved in water, and, unbelievably, brews containing mercury, a literal poison. It didn't take a genius to predict how that ended. Many women accidentally poisoned themselves trying to prevent pregnancy, which in the cruelest sense possible worked, since corpses can't conceive. And then there was the infamous sneezing method. Physicians claimed that if a woman sneezed hard enough immediately after intercourse, she could expel the seed before it took hold. So women would keep pepper or other irritants nearby to trigger post-sex sneezing fits. Medieval medicine, now with 100% less logic and 200% more sinus irritation, the so-called physical barriers were equally horrifying. Women inserted everything from honey-soaked wool to crocodile dung inside themselves to block sperm. Some even used half a lemon as a makeshift cervical cap, which, to be fair, might have slightly worked due to citric acid, but it's safe to assume it wasn't exactly comfortable. Timing-based birth control didn't fare much better. Medieval doctors believed women were most fertile during menstruation and least fertile mid-cycle, the exact opposite of reality. So couples trying to avoid pregnancy were, in effect, scheduling their sex lives for maximum conception efficiency while proudly thinking they were outsmarting biology. Then there was magical contraception. Because when science fails, why not try sorcery? Women wore amulets inscribed with charms, carried fertility stones, or performed rituals involving burned herbs and moonlit burials. Some spells required walking backward around a church 3 times while reciting prayers. Apparently, God needed GPS coordinates to process birth control requests. Even the one method that could have worked, withdrawal, was condemned. Medieval physicians insisted that it was dangerous for men, warning it could cause blindness, insanity, or even death. According to them, holding in semen was basically self-poisoning. So yes, the only effective method on the list was officially discouraged by the experts of the day. It's hard not to marvel at how utterly deranged medieval sexuality was. This was a society where young couples were sewn into sacks to bond safely, priests ran brothels in the name of purity, and royal couples were forced to have sex in front of witnesses. In the end, the medieval obsession with sex reveals something timeless about humanity. When people are desperate enough, they'll believe anything and try everything. Whether it's wearing enchanted underwear, eating animal brains for stamina, or letting the local bishop manage your love life, the past proves one undeniable truth. Human beings have always been willing to go to ridiculous lengths in the pursuit of pleasure, power, and control. So, the next time someone calls the Middle Ages a time of purity and restraint, remember the truth. It wasn't holiness that defined medieval sex, it was chaos. A world where people wore animal organs as jewelry, consulted the stars for conception, and treated fertility like a divine lottery. Where priests blessed brothels, doctors prescribed mercury, and couples were watched by crowds while they proved their marriage valid. Beneath all the superstition and hypocrisy was something deeply human, a desperate, clumsy attempt to understand desire in a world ruled by fear and faith. The medieval obsession with controlling sex wasn't just bizarre, it was a mirror reflecting the timeless truth that no matter the century, humanity will always chase passion, invent rules to manage it, and then break every single one.